Hello, my creeplings. I'm just going to get straight into it. I just finished watching Waxwork 2, and we are going to talk about it. Remember how I said in the previous Waxwork episode for Waxwork number 1 how it was Cheese Fest, and it was an unexpected Cheese Fest? So if we're talking about cheese here, this was the off-brand Velveeta. I wasn't expecting it. It wasn't what I wanted. This is also a cheese fest, but this is more like a nice cheddar. You expect it, you ended up loving it. Still cheesy, but cheesy in a good way. So we'll get down to the particulars right now. Waxwork 2 is a direct sequel to Waxwork. It is called Waxwork 2 Lost in Time. It was also directed and written by Anthony Hickox again. Hopefully this script took them longer than 3 days. The story picks up immediately after the first Waxwork, but this movie was not released until 1992. So there was quite a bit of time between when the first one was released, and it was released theatrically, and then this one was released straight to video and video on demand. Back in the day, we called it pay-per-view. I remember ads for this one. I was about 12 at the time, 12, 13. Again, it was one of those, I was aware of it, but I never really watched it until today. I'm kicking my pants for not watching it until today. We got a good cast list in this one. Zach Galligan from Gremlins is back as Mark Loftmore. And again, I've got notes down here, so you're going to see me looking this way. We had to replace Sarah Brightman, though, with a new actress. Her name is Monica Schnarr. Schnarre? I think it's Schnarr. Her big claim to fame is she is the youngest competitor to ever, or the youngest person to ever win the Supermodel of the World competition and ended up signing with Ford Models. She's done a handful of movies that I recognize the titles of. Some I'd even heard, I had even watched, but I don't remember her in them. And lots of TV guest spots. Lots of TV guest spots. I thought I recognized her as I was watching this, but I couldn't put my finger on where, and that's why I probably saw her on a television show in passing years later. We don't have any other returning actors except for Patrick McNee returns in a small capacity as Sir Wilfrid, and if I remember to explain why I say it a limited capacity, it's because of how the other one ended. But we do have some names show up here in either cameos or pretty juicy roles. Looking down the list, of course, I mentioned it in the last one, we have one of my absolute favorites, Bruce Campbell. I will try not to gush or ramble on. Too late. I love Bruce Campbell. If for some reason, Bruce, you're watching this, just know you have given me years upon years of entertainment through the projects you've done, even your books. We go down to the next one. My husband was thrilled to see this one. Michael, I believe it's pronounced DeBar. He is most famous, at least in my household, for old school MacGyver being, oh God, what was the bad guy's name? He was like the bad guy. What is his name? I was just talking about him earlier. Okay, I pulled a total vacuum in my head. I do not remember. But if you are fans of old school MacGyver, you'll remember. And I'll probably remember the character's name and scream it out later. Or blurt it out, I should say. MacGyver's? Anyway, he also was in the new MacGyver as the, I believe, mentor of the guy who's playing the character he used to play. He does a lot of genre work. What was it? Ghoulies, I think, was one of them. The man plays a maniacal bad guy just beautifully. And oh God, he's amazing. Marina Sirtis from Star Trek The Next Generation has a small part in here. Looking very nice when it comes to the costuming and everything. They dressed her well. And then David Carradine has a cameo, as well as Blink and You'll Miss It with Drew Barrymore. And I do mean blink and you'll miss it. I had to go back once I saw that in the end credits, and I'm like, okay, I went back and I'm like, oh yeah, that is her. So this literally starts right at the end of the first one. They come stumbling out of the bushes. The zombie hand's following them. They don't realize it. They hail a cab. They drop Sara off at home. Mark goes home. When Sara gets home, her stepdad, of course, half asleep. It's 3 a.m. Yells at her, gets grumpy. You know, typical father stuff. I'm not going to condemn him for being worried about his stepdaughter. The zombie hand kills him. And I don't say that to give it away. That's the next plot point. The next plot point is Sarah's on trial for the murder of her stepfather, and no one believes her when she says a zombie hand did it. She ended up, I know, where's the zombie hand? Why don't they have it for evidence? It went down the garbage disposal. I half expected it to give her the finger as it was going down, but it didn't. That would have been a nice cherry on top of the sundae, though. So Mark gets the idea to go figure out a way to find a zombie hand, just like, you know, how they had the pocket dimensions in the Waxwork. They're wondering if there's a way to go back and do that. So they go to the late Sir Wilfrid's estate. And apparently he had prepared for this. And in a study, a room, the room in his house, he left them a reel-to-reel film, not a videotape, but a reel-to-reel film that dates this like crazy. Basically saying, well, I know I'm dead, and I kind of anticipated you guys might need some help, so I left everything to you, Mark. Everything that your grandfather and I had ever collected that I kept is yours. They find in the collection this device called, I believe, a Solomon's locket. And it will allow you to jump through time and again, I'm really having to read this. There's a lot of names I don't remember. It allows them to travel through another universe called Cartogra, which will take them to different points in time and different parallel universes, basically. And of the many worlds that Cartogra is made up of, the battle for good and evil is going on. When evil gets the upper hand in one of the worlds, it shows up in our world as famine, natural disasters, war, impoverished dictatorships, that kind of thing. I felt like I had to hiccup. Pardon me. So they discover the time doors and they start time jumping. The first jump is an homage to Frankenstein. Now, here's the problem when you jump time and jump into these different worlds of Cartogra. You can easily what the character that you're replacing can easily take over your mind and you actually think you're that person. For example, Sara in this first jump thinks she's Baron Frankenstein's fiance until Mark snaps her out of it. But there are points where she keeps losing herself to this character. So then they jump again, and they're separated this time. Now here's where it kind of gets, one's more interesting than the other. She jumps into an homage to Aliens, which I thought was kind of boring and very like C movie-ish level. The effects were Rubber Suit Man and all that. Now Mark jumped into an homage to The Haunting, not the remake from the late 90s, early 2000s, but the original. This was shot in black and white. This is where Bruce Campbell shows up as the lead parapsychologist. On a side note, anybody who knows the relationship between Bruce Campbell and Ted Raimi, and then knows how Ted Raimi tends to dress, this looks like Bruce raided Ted's closet and borrowed Ted's hair from about that point in time and his glasses from about that point in time. I, for a minute, was going, why does he look like Ted Raimi? Just immediate thoughts in my head. I still loved it because it's Bruce being Bruce, but not over the top Bruce. He's almost trying to play it straight, which makes it even funnier. This is where Marina Sirtis also shows up. Since this is the 1960s, she looks very mod. She's got a bit of a hair bump and the side ponytail, the graphic eyeliner. She looks great. The part's not huge, but it's a very fun part. I'm just like, this is better than Counselor Troy, but that, again, is my opinion. And I love me some Counselor Troy. That one plays out just exactly how you think it's going to play out. Mark is still aware that he's Mark the entire time. You get a really cool flayed open chest effect in this one, and they kind of play around with that situation for some comedic laughs. I don't think if you gave that to any other actor than Bruce Campbell, maybe if you'd have given it to Ted, but Ted at the time would have been probably too young for what they were trying to do. I don't think anybody but those two really could have played that part like that. So, Bruce, you were perfect, baby. Somehow they managed to jump. I may have missed how Mark got to Sara, and then Sara and Mark jumped to the next section, which is the bigger section of all of this. It's a medieval period. She's embodying the sister of a sorcerer named Scarabus. He's trying to marry her off to the King of England, and in the same vein, going to try and impersonate the King of England. There's a lot going on here, but here's where Michael DeBar shows up as the oily, greasy, Grimo Wormtongue-esque, but a bit more physical and sadistic sidekick. He's the second in command. This man eats this part up like it is a gourmet dinner. He's the best part of the section, other than the sword fight through time. But they linger in this section quite a bit. It's very interesting. I will say the whole soundtrack, the score underneath reminds me of, what is the name of the group? Enigma. Really big in the early 90s, had that kind of new agey. They played with Gregorian chants and all that. That's what most of the soundtrack sounds like throughout this section, especially during the banquet section. I kept sitting there thinking, man, if this is not transporting me back to the early 90s, just sound-wise, I don't know what will, because music like that was around heavily. Oh, excuse me, I hiccuped. Now this is also where the cameo by David Carradine happens at the beginning of this section. Sir Wilfrid's spirit shows up in the form of a raven and explains a little more to Mark. Mark has jumped into the body of the secret lover of Sara's character. Now, she keeps slipping in and out of this character. Mark is always almost fully aware that he is Mark and what has happened. We also learn via Sir Wilfrid's spirit at this point in time that there are other people that jump through time with these devices that are constantly battling for good and evil. They're called Time Warriors. So this is not a new thing for the parallel universes, I guess you would call them. So eventually Scarabus and Mark have a sword fight that literally takes them through different times, pocket universes. They are, in this order, homages to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the 1970s Dawn of the Dead, Jack the Ripper, Nosferatu from the early 20s, and this is where the Drew Barrymore cameo shows up. She's one of the victims laying in the bed. They have a Godzilla, even with the bad dubbing, and everybody who knows about Godzilla movies and bad dubbing knows what I'm talking about. Mark does collect a zombie hand in his jumps, and he manages to take it with him. They defeat Scarabus, and they're trying to go home. They figure out how to get home instead of jumping from pocket dimension to pocket dimension to pocket dimension. But at this point, the door only allows one person to go through. It got smaller. So he sends Sara through with the hand. She gets exonerated. At the end of the trial, when she's cleared, a very similar to the Back to the Future, this telegram's been sitting around our office since the beginning of time moment happens with a courier with her. He ends up having one of the little devices, and there's a note that just says, join me, and so she does. Because Mark ended up becoming a time warrior. There's a painting of him in Sir Wilfrid's study that she sees before she leaves it for the last time. I would watch this over the first one. Sorry, my hair's going nuts. Let's do this. I would definitely watch this over the first one. There are still points where the effects are definitely on the cheesier side. And again, I really don't know if that was meant on purpose or not. This time it almost felt a bit purposeful, so I laughed more, but I was laughing anyway because Bruce Campbell and Michael DeBar and just some of the ridiculousness of it. It's costumed very well, especially considering they're jumping through so many genres and times. When they're doing the sword fight in Dawn of the Dead, since it's the 70s, Mark is wearing the Saturday Night Fever white suit with the black, and it got the stacked heels and everything. And Scarabus looks like a member of the Warriors, almost. Like some roughed up biker gang 70s era villain, and it's great. The medieval costuming was wonderful. The 1920s costuming was wonderful. The historical costume geek in me was going, yay! It's actually, I think the script was better. The soundtrack, other than that Enigma section, was not memorable, except for at the very end. Over the credits, there is this lovely little rap number where it looks like they actually filmed it on, like, in between, like, actual real takes with the cast. And everybody, the cast in the background just looks like they're having so much fun. Would I recommend this? Yes, I would definitely recommend this over the first one. I don't think you actually have to have a double feature to understand it. You just have to kind of read the plot synopsis for the first one. Because it's so far removed from what actually happened, other than the fact that we're talking about Sir Wilfrid Pocket Dimensions and Mark and Sara. I will say, if you do watch these back to back, it's a little jarring to go from one Sara to the other, because first Sarah's got a cute little haircut and is smaller than Mark, and second Sarah's got longer hair, looks completely different, is almost as tall as, or if not taller than Mark. It's a little jarring. But, you know, there were not it wasn't common for movies to get made like nowadays, how with the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings, they pretty much filmed them all at once. Or I know some other movies, like the Subspecies movies, the second and third film were filmed back to back, like literally at the same time. As soon as they wrapped up stuff with 2, they literally next day started stuff with 3. Same thing with the Ginger Snaps movies. I think 2 and 3 were filmed simultaneously or shortly after each other. That wasn't a thing for this. There was, let's see, what I say. Waxwork came out in 88 or 89. So there was a 3 to 4 year gap between the two. Excuse me. If you love Michael DeBar, if you love Bruce Campbell, if you want to see Marina Sirtis do something fun, if you like homages to other movies, I would highly recommend this. If you like Zach Galligan, definitely watch this. If you pass it up, though, I would understand. It's a fun ride. Like I said, better than the first one by leaps and bounds. I have not seen any other films by this director, though. I'm sure if I looked, I could find them. So I guess on that note, we're going to leave it on a high point. This was a good one. Hoping the rest of them, you know, just go up from here, although I'm sure I'm going to find a few stinkers here and there. Not everybody can like everything, because if we did, you know, we wouldn't have lively discussions at all now, would we? So I'm going to say good night, my creeplings, and have a fun day. or evening or whatever time you're watching this. Bye.